Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Better Than Food Book Reviews. I'm your host, Clifford Lee Sargent. Great to see you as always. Hope you're doing well. Get that coffee. Delicious. Rainy day here in Mississippi. It's nice. Black coffee and rainy days is one of the best pairs in history, and the only thing that makes it better is a book. And I've got one to tell you about. Today is The Golem by the Austrian author Gustav Meyrink, published in 1915. This was a kind gift from my friend and patron, Anos. Thank you very much. I love this cover, not because it's a still from the German expressionist silent film adaptation directed by Paul Wegener from 1920, which is cool, though it actually has nothing to do with the novel except for the Golem myth. This is actually not the Golem on the cover here. This is the god Astaroth, who provides the word that gives life to the Golem, but actually because it reminds me of one of the greatest goth rock songs of all time. Tribal Eye by the English band Rebel Christening, who released a 12-inch with that song and this image as a cover. They never released a full album. It's a horrible tragedy in the history of music. Easily one of the greatest goth rock songs ever produced. Link below. The Golem is an occult urban gothic folk horror story inspired by Kabbalah, which is esoteric Jewish mysticism. It's one of the strangest novels I've read, a dream within a dream, literally. A labyrinthine narrative about identity and sacred revelation. Borges and Lovecraft approved. Gustav Meyrink was a compelling character, a famous author of supernatural fiction. At the age of 24, he was sitting in his apartment in Prague with a gun to his head when a little pamphlet was pushed through his door entitled The Afterlife, and it inspired him to study the occult heavily. It seems that Christianity is usually what people find when they're on the brink like that, right? Meyrink went in a completely different direction. Later on in life, he actually became a Buddhist, which is interesting. The Golem is about a guy visiting Prague, maybe Gustav the author, we don't know, he's never named, who accidentally grabs the wrong hat at a church during High Mass. And so he goes back to his hotel, and he realizes he has the wrong hat, and he reads the name in the hat, in the inner band, and he goes to sleep. And he has an extremely detailed, vivid, epic dream wherein he lives the life of this hat's owner, and that's the novel. But he's living the life of this guy 33 years ago in the past. A man named Athanasius Pernath, a gem engraver who lived in a Jewish ghetto in Prague in the 1800s. In this dream, Pernath has lost his memory of the earlier parts of his life, so he's on a quest to remember it, to remember who he is. He's suffering from some kind of strange amnesia. This journey is also a spiritual one, intermittently revealing, in waking dreamlike fashion, the nature of reality and himself. So this is a remarkably original literary setup. A man who becomes another man trying to remember who he is. The book suggests that the barrier between our separate identities is porous to some degree. It has a very Eastern European Gothic horror quality. Reminds me of The Trial by Kafka, with the tone and aesthetic of the films of Jan Svankmajer and the brothers Quay. I always wanted to visit Prague on Halloween. That's like one of my bucket list things. I've never been to Prague, never been to the Czech Republic. Within the story of Pernath, there are several interlacing narratives featuring the ghetto's inhabitants. One involving a Kabbalistic mystic named Hillel and his daughter Miriam, another involving an illegitimate son named Harusek, whose life goal is revenge on his father, this fellow named Wassertrum, who's this evil junk dealer with a hair lip. There are all kinds of strange characters, including a crooked doctor who engages in a very disturbing kind of untraceable medical fraud, performing iridectomies. Ugh. Real quick though, if you'd like a tool for finding quality doctors instead of crooks, I'd like to direct you to the sponsor of today's video, ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a revolutionary healthcare platform connecting patients with top-rated doctors in their area. It's a free service and very easy to use. Maybe you need a last-minute appointment, or a new primary care physician, or perhaps just a specialist. Or maybe you're having issues with places that aren't accepting new patients, or don't take your insurance. Or maybe you're just feeling overwhelmed to choosing from some random list, right? God knows we've all been there. If you're having issues finding doctors who take your health insurance, or you just want the best available, I suggest you hop on there and give a search. Again, it's a free service. ZocDoc makes it easy to search and compare doctors based on your needs, such as insurance, location, and patient reviews, ensuring that you get quality care quickly and efficiently. It's extremely convenient to use in an era where all things healthcare related are typically by default more difficult than anyone could ever possibly imagine. So give them a shot by going to ZocDoc.com/BTF, or you can click on the link below. And thanks to ZocDoc for sponsoring the show. So the golem abides by its own dream logic as we wander through the streets of Prague in this ghetto with Athanasius, who often experiences mystical visions after being given something called the Book of Ibor by the golem. The golem is a Jewish myth about a man made of clay, called the golem, who is brought to life by the insertion of a piece of paper with a special word written on it behind its teeth. In the book, it's said that the golem lives in a building in the ghetto, in a room with no entrance. Creepy, huh? It is a horror novel. One thinks of God creating Adam out of clay, and there's a similarity in the golem myth and the hatred the character Hadosek feels towards his father for having created him. God creating Adam, man creating man. What for? What does it all mean? We don't know. It reminded me of one of my favorite short stories by Borges called The Circular Ruins, which is about a man working at dreaming another man to life, into existence. Might have been inspired by this one, actually. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Very similar territory. It's a beautiful short story, too. It's tragically profound, and it's only a few pages. It's really impressive. One of my favorites of all time, for sure. The undulating rise and fall of people and places throughout time is a huge theme of the novel. The passage of time and identity. Impermanence, right? But the golem in this novel is mostly symbolic. There's no clay man, right? Unlike the film adaptation. The golem usually looks like Pernath's doppelganger, his double, right? Who appears at various points in the book. Nobody really knows what he is. Just like in Jewish mythology, the golem can stand for many things. It has no fixed symbolism. This is a quote from the book where Hillel tells Pernath the following. Assume that the man who came to you and whom you call the golem signifies the awakening of the dead through your innermost spiritual life. Each thing on earth is nothing but an eternal symbol clothed in dust. It's pretty cool. I think to better understand what's going on in the narrative, we have to examine the book given to Pernath by the golem, the Book of Ibor. Ibor is a Kabbalistic concept meaning the impregnation of a body by another soul. The transmigration of a soul into a body. It's a temporary form of possession with the intention of fulfilling a spiritual task. This seems to be what Pernath is experiencing, though I'm not sure we ever figure out who this soul is or what its aims are, if any. The Golem is a romantic gothic horror novel with philosophical elements and moments of dark comedy. Surreal, not really experimental in structure, which is a pretty straightforward linear narrative, but experimental in its stylistic stew. I can safely say you have never read any other book like it. Why is The Golem special? Well, first off, because of its elaborate and creative plot device, which, incredibly, Meyrink pulls off. And it also transcends the horror novel to become something philosophically and metaphysically speculative. It tells us explicitly that, to quote the book, memory and knowledge are the same thing. What an ironically forgotten truth. I should really try to remember that. So simple, yet so elusive. The Golem doesn't operate on any logic other than its own strange brand of occult romanticism. Highly emotional, sort of bleeding all the way through, and subject to strange whims and fits of temporary insanity with moments of legitimately laugh-out-loud comedy. It's a Baroque nightmare, both meditative and theatrical, similar in tone to E.T.A. Hoffman's The Sandman. It's kind of like, and, you know? It's very, very Lynchian. Everything from the dreamy atmosphere, to the weird waking visions, to the sinister shadowy characters, and even the overly saccharine gushing emotionality. It's totally Twin Peaks before Twin Peaks, almost 100 years before. It's really quite something. Funny enough, the melodramatic cliches employed by the book give it a kind of timeless feel. It's like a Lovecraftian soap opera in Prague. It's quite aware of its own looniness. You can follow it. The narrative is told very simply, and it is told in a logical fashion, but it often deviates, and suddenly you're subjected to Meyrink's dream logic. And that's actually very fun because you have a lot of cliche dialogue and sappy story elements, yet you never really know when Meyrink is going to throw a total curveball. And some of it is actually creepy, right? In one scene, Pernath's consciousness is projected into the head of a puppet his friend is carving, and he's suddenly staring back at himself watching the puppet. It gets even weirder after that. That scene had a very Thomas Ligotti feel. And it's moments like that where you remember that it's a horror novel. That's not all it is, but yeah, it's partially a horror novel. But honestly, on the whole, I don't know what the fuck you call that book. There's an idea of the interconnectedness of life at the heart of the golem, and that appears to be what the symbol of the golem and the book itself represents, a manifestation of the collective psychological experience of life and all its trials and tribulations. But for me, the statement, if there is one, of Meyrink's novel cannot be easily defined. There are so many paths you could go down regarding interpretation with this one, and I'm sure there's a ton of symbolism that was lost on me in the first reading. But that's the fun of it. This is one of those books where you finish it with a cascade of echoes of strange images in your head, and you immediately want to read it again. And you know it's complex, but it's not obnoxious in its complexity, or pretentious in its obscurity or intellectualism. Don't be intimidated by it, you can understand it. It's like wandering around a haunted funhouse or something. The novel meanders all over the damn place, and I mean it really wanders. And it's so interesting to see that you can do that in a novel, while still keeping focus on one main character in a linear story. You don't have to go off and begin other stories and bring them back, right? I mean, you do have stories within the story, but the perspective only shifts once from Dreamer to Pernath. I hope that all made sense. I don't mean to be overly complicated. The curious thing about the Golem, I realized, is that Pernath has no solid objective. There's no goal Pernath has other than discovering what fate has in store for him, moving through various moments of spiritual experience. Interestingly, in the book, the tarot plays a part in this. So while it's not perfect, it does remain impressive as a demonstration of what you can pull off in a novel. Incredibly original. Better than food. Solid 4 out of 5 coffees. I recommend it. So what did I dislike? Some of the more melodramatic moments caused me to roll my eyes, for sure. I mean, same thing happened in Twin Peaks. And there are some areas that drag. It probably could have had a good 50 pages chopped, but that's just my opinion. So who should read it? Anyone who enjoys Borges, Kafka, and Lovecraft. Check it out. And that's all I've got. If you want to help keep the show going, my Patreon link is below. Thanks very much to all my patrons for helping keep the show going. Much appreciated. All right, die reading.